Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Yeah, Pradeep Prabhu, whenever you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji.
Sure, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Today we are reading Canto 4, Chapter 29, Talks between Narada and King Prachinabharhi from verse 55 to 65. Text 55. My dear king, just try to understand the allegorical position of the deer. Be fully conscious of yourself and give up the pleasure of hearing about promotion to heavenly planets by fruitive activity. Give up household life, which is full of sex as well as stories about such things, and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the mercy of the liberated souls. In this way, please give up your attraction for material existence. Text 56. The king replied, my dear Brahmana, whatever you have said I have heard with great attention, and considering all of it, have come to the conclusion that the acharyas, teachers who engaged me in fruitive activity did not know this confidential knowledge. If they were aware of it, why did they not explain it to me? Text 57. My dear Brahmana, there are contradictions between your instruction and those of my spiritual teachers who have engaged me in fruitive activities. I now can understand the distinction between the devotional service, knowledge, and renunciation. I have some doubts about them, but you have I had some doubts about them, but you have now very kindly dissipated all those doubts. I can now understand how even the great sages are bewildered by the real purpose of life. Of course, there is no question of sense gratification. Text 58. The results of whatever a living entity does in this life are enjoyed in the next life. Text 59. The expert knowers of the Vedic conclusions say that one enjoys or suffers the results of his past activities, but practically it is seen that the body that performed the work in the last birth is already lost. So how is it possible to enjoy or suffer the reactions of that work in a different body? Text 60. The great sage Narada continued, the living entity acts in a gross body in this life. This body is forced to act by the subtle body composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. After the gross body is lost, the subtle body is still there to enjoy or suffer. There is no change. Text 61. The living entity, while dreaming, gives up the actual living body. Through the activities of his mind and intelligence, he acts in another body, either as a god or a dog. After giving up the gross body, the living entity enters either an animal body or a demigod's body on this planet or on another planet. He thus enjoys the results of the actions of his past life. Text 62. The living entity labors upon the bodily conception of I am this, I am that. My duty is this, and therefore I shall do it. There are all mental impressions, and all these activities are temporary. Nonetheless, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity gets a chance to execute all his mental concoctions. Thus he gets another body. Text 63. One can understand the mental or conscious position of a living entity by the activities of two kinds of senses, the knowledge acquiring senses and the executive senses. Similarly, by the mental condition or consciousness of a person, one can understand his position in the previous life. Text 64. Sometimes we suddenly experience something that was never experienced in the present body by sight or hearing. Sometimes we see such things suddenly in dreams. Text 65. Therefore, my dear king, the living entity who has a subtle mental covering develops all kinds of thoughts and images because of his previous body. Take this from me as certain. There is no possibility of concocting anything mentally without having perceived it in the previous body. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. So we'll discuss this section today. Briefly offer prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarani जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे राम राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे राम हरे say we're in the section where Narada Muni is describing, he has described a couple of different analogies or allegories to enlighten King Prachinabari. Why he is enlightening King Prachinabari? Narada Muni wanted to give his mercy. As a Uttamadhikari devotee, they give mercy to those who are innocent, those who are ignorant, so that they can also understand the goal of life, purpose of life, and achieve the same. So, with that, Prachin Barhi, we heard how he was very much attached to the fruitive activities. So, why also we hear in this section today? Basically, then, so Narad Muni explained him the allegory of King Puranjana, we heard for several chapters. And then now, uh, after hearing all that, then is described in this section by Acharya Vishwanath Chakra Thakur that how he is thinking, Prachin Bhai is thinking, oh, my sons went to forest to do austerities to have children. So let me send some messenger to inform them that, my dear sons, please come back soon so that and now I will go to the forest to do devotion service like that. Because he was wanting to take Vanaprastha ashram, which is standard practice in Vedic culture. After Brahmacharya, Grihastha ashram or married life, and then Vanaprastha ashram. And then sannyasi if somebody is capable and somebody has the sufficient spiritual strength to do so. So he wanted to take Vanaprastha ashram after uh, his sons come back so that we can give the responsibility to sons nicely to rule the kingdom like that. Interestingly, Nardamani in this situation, we see Nardamani in many situations is patient and wait for some living entities for next life also. But in this case, Nardamani chose to uh, shake him up, hurry him up, uh, create a sense of urgency for King Prachinabharhi. So for that, this is the last section we're in, 52 to 55 verses. So where he started to describe the allegory of a deer that you heard yesterday from Gopijan Primataji. So today's verse is a conclusion of this deer allegory, wherein very briefly the deer was busily enjoying the nice grass that is trying to eat without worrying about the tiger that is behind that might kill at any time, jump on it at any time and kill like that. And the hunter, actually, tiger in the front is described, right, in the allegory. And then hunter is in the back, he might kill any time. He's not thinking about any of them, only thinking about enjoying the grass right now, enjoying the music right now. That's all, nothing more than that. What is the music that deer was enjoying? The singing of the bumblebees, like that. Similarly, we are a conditioned living entity is absorbed in household life to enjoy with family, wife and children like that, without thinking about how time is running away and how we're not spending time on the purpose of life, number one, and how death is coming soon. That also will not, uh, normal conditioned soul is not conscious about time or death or time running out like that, while busy in enjoying the family life. So that is the allegory, how it's going. So today's the last verse of that allegory, where Narada how he explained the real meaning of the allegory in after King Puranjana's story he described. Now, Narada Muni is directly coming to the allegory. He's telling, you are like the deer, like that, he's telling. Let's go to 655 now. He's saying, uh, just try to understand this position of a deer. Be fully conscious of yourself and give us the pleasure of hearing about promotion to heavenly planets by fruitive activity. That means don't try to engage in the fruitive activity to go over heavenly planets. Keep on going on doing that. And then give up this household life also, which is full of sex, as well as stories of such things, and take shelter of Supreme Personality of Godhead. How? Through the mercy of the liberated soul. In this way, please give up your attraction for material existence. So, after telling the dear Algari to rush him to create a sense of urgency for Nardmuni, for Prachinabharhi to take up spiritual life more seriously right now. Not I will do it next week. Actually, next month, August 1st is best. No, no. Janmashtami is coming up. Maybe I'll start at that time. No, no. Kartik is coming up in 3 months. I'll start at that time. Not like that. Sense of urgency should be there for a practicing devotee to start it right now, today, like that. So that's what Narmani is creating through this particular verse he spoke now. Basically, is describing that we, by taking shelter of a spiritual master, by following the instructions of the spiritual master, by taking his association properly, like Sadhu Sangha, then by following his instructions nicely, then we can make a path to take shelter of Supreme Lord and go back to Supreme Lord like that. That is the essence of this particular verse for us. So in this purport, Prabhupada is emphasizing the the normal condition of a conditioned soul, where they're so busy engaged in the family life, this thing, that thing, that thing, this thing, no time for spiritual life. So that's a caution we need to be careful about. It's not saying that Bhagavatam is not telling us, spiritual master is not telling us that to live spirit family life. They're only telling, make sure there's time for spirituality. Make sure we're engaged in family life, not for a lower purposes of enjoying, but a higher purpose of elevating together as a family spiritually. So that's what the scriptures are telling us. So that is one theme Prabhupada talks about. Second theme Prabhupada talks about is the Vanaprastha ashram that he talked about in few verses ago also, wherein it's important to not just stay family till all the way till death. That means some people we see are not only attached to their wife, not only attached to their husband, not only attached to their children, but their grandchildren, the grandchildren's children, our grandchildren's cousins. Like that, their all mind is all absorbed around thinking about them only. Nothing much spirituality, even though they became old already. So when we see somebody like that, we need to learn from their negative example and understand I should be careful not to become so much attached. So our children, I take care of my family, immediate family, and they take care of their children. So I should be detached while ensuring I responsibly perform all my duties. So that is how we need to take it in our spiritual life also, practice our life. We should be careful not to become too much attached. Then, yeah, he talks about how initiation from a bona fide spiritual master is a must. So that will help us to actually take complete shelter of Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's another theme Prabhupada talks about. So because normally it's very difficult for me to give up my enjoying mentality, to give up my attachment to enjoying in a particular way like that. But through a proper spiritual masters, bona fide spiritual masters, proper instructions, and guidance and training, I can understand, oh, I'm so attached to enjoyment. That realization will come. Until that time, we'll not know that I'm only attached to enjoyment also. Then we'll enjoy. Oh, really? I'm also attached to enjoyment. I thought only so and so purpose is attached to enjoyment. Now we'll get the realization that I'm attached to enjoyment. Then we'll understand that I need to shift from enjoyment propensity to service to Supreme Lord like that. Once we realize that first, then we'll pay attention to instructions that we read and hear. How do we increase our service attitude towards Krishna? How do we train ourselves? How we train our subtle body, mind, intelligence, and false ego that next section is talking about to change from enjoyment tendency to service tendency to Krishna like that. So that is another thing. All this can happen easily by mercy of a spiritual master, by guidance and training from a spiritual master. That's the other theme Prabhupada is talking about in the purport. And then, yeah, Prabhupada is in the last section of the purport. Prabhupada is also emphasizing that two more points. One is that now that we realize the importance of spiritual master and we realize the importance of sadhu sangha or association of saintly persons, then we also try to create that association for others also in their life. So that way they will also elevate themselves spiritually like that. That is one more theme Prabhupada is emphasizing in the purport. And the last theme Prabhupada emphasizes in the purport is about the principle of Yukta Vairagya. This is a very important principle for us to understand. So sometimes a devotee is going to two extreme. One extreme is Krishna is Bhavagrahi Janardana. That means he will understand my mood. It's okay, whatever I do, I don't need to follow in rules and regulations. I just do whatever I can. I don't need to follow, no need to strive for following rules and regulations. And no need to reduce any luxurious mentality I have right now. They will keep on enjoying. That is one extreme. Another extreme is, oh, I heard that luxuries are bad. So I need to cut down everything. This, cut in this, cut down this, cut down this, cut down this, and focus on only renunciation aspect. That means vairagya. That is, that may not be so suitable at the current position of my spiritual journey right now, like that. So Prabhupada is emphasizing the principle of Yukta Vairagya, which is resting on the principle of uh, utilizing things, even luxuries, only as much as my current position needs it, so that I can practice spiritual life. That means for me, sitting in a sofa is necessary for me, is a need for me, so that I can sit and chant, for example. But for somebody else, that is not a necessity. I'm giving a simple example, but once you understand this example, we can apply it in different detail. So basically, how we utilize things in our life as long as they're favorable to Krishna consciousness and not utilize them if they're not favorable in Krishna consciousness. So that is the angle of vision that a devotee utilizes to make progress in spiritual life at our current position. So not act, we don't need to act like Paramahamsa right now, but we act at our current level, whatever our needs, we take care of them, but giving time for our spiritual life also. That should not be left. Spiritual life is the highest goal for us. And then even keeping the necessities to enjoy is lower goal for us. Of course, as we grow in spirituality, our only goal becomes pleasing Krishna. But at the current position, we may be in mixed position currently, with both going on in our mind and intelligence currently. And that's the last thing Prabhupada talks about. Actually, this Yukta principle becomes natural and easy as we elevate in devotional service. For example, for Uttamadhikari, because his vision itself is changed, he can see everything and everybody as connected to Krishna, as energies of Krishna, as things to be utilized for Krishna service. So when we get to that level, it is very natural and it's very simple for us to utilize everything and everyone in Krishna service. But for now, we're practicing at our level what we can do. That we need to remember. it's always important to remember the goal, final goal we need to get to, even though I'm not able to practice at that level currently. That way, without any envy, I can progress towards that final goal, which is to utilize everything and anything to in Krishna service. So going to text 56. From this, the next section starts, wherein King Prachinabari heard now the allegory of King Puranjana and then allegory of a deer, and they understood a sense of urgency to give up sense gratification, to give up fruitive activities of karma kanda, and then focus on shelter of Krishna. So now he has certain doubts, especially related to karma and reincarnation. So in this section, he will ask those questions, and the following section, Narvani starts to answer those questions. So these few questions are in this 56 to 59. So he's starting is first of all, King is saying, oh, actually my teachers who engage me in fruitive activity, they did not know this constitutional knowledge looks like. If they knew this constitutional knowledge, then why did they not, they would have explained it to me, but why did they not explain to me? Like that is expressing. So, so now Prabhupada writes in the purport, now King Bachibari had the realization that whatever he learned from the previous teachers, uh, it was not a perfect knowledge. It was only limited knowledge. That's what he understood. So now he gave up their instructions. He want to take up the devotion service as propounded by Sri Narada Muni. That's the point Prabhupada is writing in the purport. So that means similarly, we should not be this and a couple of other purports. Prabhupada focuses on one thing. These teachers uh, now ordinarily there are a lot of people who are lot of intelligence, lot of knowledge in the world, but not all of them know the purpose of life. Not all of them know the highest goal in spirituality also. Some people know lower goals in spirituality. For example, dharma, artha, kama. That means you engage in religion to get something to enjoy. Some people know only that level. So we need to be careful to choose a bona fide spiritual master who is teaching the highest conclusions of the scriptures. That way, we can follow the highest conclusions and make our life successful. Otherwise, we'll be stuck at a practicing at a lower level to going to a the lower purposes of Vedas will only fulfill like that. That's the other point we can learn from this section. So now going to the text 57. It says, I now can understand the difference between bhakti, jnana, and vairagya. Because previously I understood only the karma kanda portion, but now I understood clearly the devotional service that you are telling me. So then he says, I can now understand how even great sages, who were people greatly educated also, they they may be bewildered of the real purpose of life. So of course there's no question of sense gratification. Like that is expressing his conclusion. That means the previous teachers, even though they have enough knowledge, but they don't have the real higher knowledge. They're bewildered. They did not get the conclusion of the scriptures properly. So that's what is asserting in this verse now. And it's also asserting, if you notice, there's no question of sense gratification in devotion service like that. So why? Because sense gratification puts us into bodily conception of life. Bodily conception of life centers around I and mine. That we'll hear in the coming verses also. Aham mameti principle like that is described. Ahanta and mameti principle. So that the moment we're in the bodily conception of life, that we're only caring about body, not the soul, which we are. So that is why sense gratification is not suitable, not favorable for devotion service. Of course, I cannot give up all my sense gratification today, right now, even though that is desirable. But we need to develop enough spiritual strength by practicing spiritual sadhana nicely. That with that spiritual strength, it will become easy to give up sense gratification gradually, step by step. Now, text number 58. He's saying, the results of whatever living entity does in this life or enjoy in the next life. So now he's coming to the question. To come to the question, is building up the stage for it. He's saying, whatever a living entity does in this life, the reactions you'll enjoy in the next life, you told me. That is clear. Now he says, um, but how is that possible? In the 59th verse, he's saying, practically, the body that is used to perform the work in the last birth is already burnt off or buried, whatever. The body is gone already. So body is not existing. So body is really performing the work. So body is gone. So now, how is it possible to enjoy the past reaction, enjoy or suffer the past reactions in a different body? So his thought process is, one body created the karma. How come another body is enjoying that karma or suffering that karma? This doesn't seem to be reasonable. How is that possible? Like that he's thinking. So now, Narada Muni starts to explain from the next verse onwards, text 60. So it's a longer section that essentially gives the principle of reincarnation, how the transmigration of soul from one body. I'm just summarizing the section before we go into the details. So in this section, Narada Muni is describing how a soul transmigrates from one body to another body and what determines which kind of body he goes to. Like that he describes. And then he gives the understanding of how subtle body, which consists of mind, intelligence, and false ego, how it carries the soul from one body to the next body, depending upon the composition or the desires and actions that are performed by subtle body through the mechanism of the gross body or the instruments, like these hands are instruments for us. But the subtle body is what is carrying the soul to the next body, and subtle body is carrying the desires that are desires and plans that it makes to the next body. So that is what is causing. So subtle body is the one that is still intact from one body to another body, and subtle body is the one that is enjoying or suffering the reactions performed in the previous body. Whereas previous body is just an instrument, but the same subtle body was there in the previous body. So essentially, Narada Muni describes in this section how the mind, which is the chief of the subtle body, is causing us to enjoy or suffer the reactions from that are performed in this body in the next body, like that. That's the essence that comes. So now when we know this principle, we understand two broad things. So one broad thing is that just when the body dies, everything is not finished because subtle body is moving on to the next body. Number one principle. That means we still exist in, soul is still existing with the covering of subtle body and moving on to the next body. That's one principle. When we know this principle, second principle will become evident in this section is that based on whatever my subtle body is engaged in currently in this body, that determines the next body. So that is a very good clue. So then I have some control on how to engage my mind intelligence right now. So that way I can get a better position in the next life. Ideally, in a spiritual body, in the spiritual world. If not, at least in another material body that is suitable for performing more devotion service. So we can go back to spiritual world and pure devotion service. So that is the essence of this section. Now going into some of the verses of this section. Narada Muni starts to answer the questions of King Prachinabarhi. He's saying this body is forced to act by the subtle body, composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. After the gross body is lost, the subtle body is still there to enjoy or suffer. So the main punchline is telling already. The subtle body is the one, even though body is gone, how is he enjoying suffering reactions in a different body, he asked, right? He's saying subtle body is the one that is enjoying or suffering the reactions of previous actions in the other body, like that. So, so Prabhupada writes in the purport to clarify this point. He says, actually, the soul is enjoying through the subtle body, which is made of mind, intelligence, and ego. Then the gross body is just an instrumental outer covering through which the subtle body is enjoying, through which subtle body is performing actions, like that. That's the important principle Prabhupada writes in the purport. Another principle he writes is Mm, the subtle body's activities, whether pious or impious, that creates the living entity another next situation to enjoy or suffer in the next gross body. So, and how does he remember when he goes to the next gross body? Krishna, as a super soul, reminds the living entity of his previous plans, previous desires, so that he can continue the plan like that. That's what is being described in the purport by Prabhupada. Going to the next verse, verse number 61. So now, Narada Muni explains this concept of transmigration of a soul, how is transmigrating with the subtle body, one gross body, to another gross body, with the example of a dream, he explains. This goes for several verses. Today we'll touch on some portion of this, and it will continue tomorrow also. He describes the 61st verse. When somebody is dreaming, the living entity is dreaming, he actually gives up the actual living body, and then through the mind and intelligence, he acts another body as a dog or a god like that. And then, uh, so that way, he goes sometimes to another planet, another country like that. That's how he enjoys the results of actions of his past life, like that he tells. Basically, he's telling how during the dream state, subtle body is the one that is active. Gross body is just lying down on the bed. But subtle body is performing all the things. Is thinking, I'm enjoying this body, I'm enjoying that body like that. So that is why, similarly, when a person dies, he goes into another body with the subtle body and subtle body is what is enjoying like that. In the purport, Prabhupada makes couple of points clear. One is the subtle body creates an atmosphere of next body with the desires and ambitions. So based on what desires and ambitions that we cultivate right now, that will determine our next body. So, and Prabhupada gives a solution also right away in this purport itself. Narada Muni did not come to solution yet, but Prabhupada is merciful to give the solution. Solution is now when we know this principle that subtle body is what is going to next body, I can train the subtle body right now by always thinking about Krishna. And he gives the example of Ambrish Maharaj. How Ambrish Maharaj was always engaged in his mind in service of Krishna, always engaged in his senses in service of Krishna. So like that, now we got a clue. If we train my subtle body, my mind, to be always engaged, mind and senses to be always engaged in service of Krishna, then I can also assure of a best position in the next life as a spiritual body in the spiritual world, or at least a material body, but still engaged in service of Krishna. Continuation of devotion service like that. So this is actually a very important understanding for us to have. Because in the beginning of devotion service, we practicing devotees sometimes may understand the importance of doing physical services, which is very, very essential, which is very, very helpful for us to purify our senses. So, while it's important to understand the importance of doing services with our hands and legs, with our other senses we have, it's also important to engage our mind and intelligence in serving Krishna through them. That means we should not check our mind out while doing services for Krishna. We should engage our mind and intelligence also in service of Krishna. What does this mean? A couple of examples I'll give. For example, we can do services at the temple, but we should be in the consciousness that I want to do this to please Krishna. I want to do this to please devotees. With that consciousness, we serve. Then it has a greater impact in our elevation of spirituality. Number one. Number two, when we are doing our spiritual practices, simple spiritual practices like chanting of japa, for example, every day, then we should do it attentively to please Krishna, to attentively with the objective of attaining bhava bhakti, to objective attaining prema, like that. Then that will have a greatest impact on our chanting. Instead of doing the physical activity of moving our lips and hearing the holy name only, we should engage our mind and intelligence also in doing japa. For example, some of us developed a bad habit of doing chanting while hearing classes, doing chanting while while lot of noise is going on. like that. So we should be careful to engage our not only our physical mouth and ear in the japa, but actually our consciousness is invested, our mind and intelligence is also invested in our japa like that. That's the way we can actually make progress. Otherwise, what will happen is the holy name is so wonderful that we still make progress, even if you're chanting like that with a distracted way. But the progress is limited, and progress, the fruit we get is also limited. Acharyas describe that we can only get liberation with such kind of chanting. We can never get Krishna Prema. We can never get back to spiritual world, Krishna Loka. So when we understand that seriousness of what we are doing, then we can put our heart into our sadhana that we're doing, whether it's chanting, hearing, and reading like that. That way we can get maximum benefit. Anyway, we're spending the time. Why? Why we spend the time? Uh, uh, why we waste our time to get a smaller result? We get the best result possible, which is Krishna's service directly in spiritual world. So that's the other aspect we can learn from this section of the verses. Going to the next verse, 62 verse talks about the aham mameti consciousness, where he's talking about how living entity labors under the bodily conception of I am this, I am that, like that. And my duty is this, therefore I shall do this, like that. So basically, when I'm thinking that I'm this body, I'll make all my plans to make my body happy, to reduce suffering for my body. That's all, not more than that. But when we understand that I'm a spirit soul, I'm meant to serve Krishna, then we make plans accordingly. So we should be careful not to be tied to only bodily conception of life, thus degrading our consciousness. Going to text number 63. So then Narada Muni describes how when somebody uh, sees the current position of the mind. So actually by seeing the activities what I'm doing now, somebody can understand what is the condition of my mind. And condition of my mind is based on what I did in the past lives. So like that, by seeing the current condition, we can understand, oh, they've been like this in the past. That's why they're acting like this. Similarly, based on what I'm doing now, I can understand what will be my next life. That's what Narumani starts to describe in the next three verses in this section. So basically, he's saying in in this section, he's saying that by identifying with a gross body, when I perform some action, then I get the results of the action in my subtle body, the next body. So then by doing activity in the next body, then I'll get a different body again like that. So similarly, by seeing the actions that I'm performing through the 10 senses, 5 knowledge acquiring senses and 5 working senses, it reveals my consciousness. We can easily make out, right? When somebody uh, is uh, is acting out with hands and speaking very harsh words, we understand they are angry for some reason. That's their mental state. Similarly, that mental state reveals what they were in the previous life also, like that Nadaman is talking about. So now, how can we really perceive this subtle body when the gross body is destroyed? That's the question somebody may get. So that's what Nadaman is addressing in the next couple of verses. He's saying, uh, actually, whatever dreams we get, okay, yeah, because he's asking, let me go to the verse 64. Sometimes we suddenly experience something that was never experienced in the present body by sight or hearing. Sometimes we see such things suddenly in dreams. In the dream, sometimes I'm seeing something that I never saw before in this lifetime. The purport Prabhupada is writing that what we are seeing is based on our experiences in the past life. Because the subtle body from the past life is carrying the memories and impressions that he carried. So that's what we're seeing in the dream, like that is saying. So later on, there's some more elaboration is coming up in the next section tomorrow on this topic, but I'll pause there on that topic. Now, 65th verse he says, uh, yeah, now in this current body also, living entity is developing different mental impressions based on what I'm doing right now. So that is also another clue for us. So what I'm doing now will create impressions. It's called samskaras. And those are, it's very important to watch out whether whatever I'm doing is favorable to devotional service or unfavorable to devotional service. Because I'm creating those samskaras which will be difficult to change if I'm creating unfavorable habits or bad habits right now. So whenever we repeating a habit, especially if it's a bad habit, we need to try to check ourselves so that we don't create a deep impressions that will result in next body and next set of actions that may not be conducive to devotional service. So that's what Narman is describing. So last verse for today, Narman describes the mind is the cause of the living entity is attaining a certain type of body in accordance means with association with material nature. So mind indicates the past and future bodies. So basically in this verse, Narmani addresses king as, O king, all good fortune unto you. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that Narmani is blessing him so that he can give up the uh, fruitive activity and focus on devotional service. And he's also concluding this verse that how mind is what is mind, impressions of the mind, plans of the mind are determining, desires of the mind are determining actions in the next life. What happens in the next life also. What body we get in the next life like that. Prabhupada is concluding this purport with the conclusion of pure devotion service definition given by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or Nectar of Devotion. Basically, he is saying that Anyabhilashita Sunyam Jnana Karma Dhyanavitam. So we should fully become free from material desires, philosophy speculation and fruitive activity and focus on pure devotion service. That is the way we can achieve the perfection of human life. So this is a very important principle to remember also that not that we do some devotion service, some enjoyment, some devotion service, some enjoyment like that. Try to focus on pure devotion service. Then uh, that will help us to get rid of material desires and also be free from fruitive activity. Yeah. So that is the principle Prabhupada is sharing in the purport. We'll continue with this mind and his role in the reincarnation and transmigration from tomorrow again. But essential principle to remember is engage our mind and senses in the current body right now in pure devotional service. So that way we can secure a proper future and proper progress in spiritual life also. We'll pause here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Prabhupada ki jai. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः।